ago, we did a little road trip, which was fun, but now we're back. And I didn't want to miss today. So I'm just going to give everybody a minute to join. And then, like always, I will get started. For those of you that are new, we are going over the Power of Now book study. Let's see here. We are moving into chapter 2. Hey, Nourish with Yes. we're doing our daily live stream today. We're going over the power of now. And today, actually, what the lesson is about is going to be more about what it feels like to live in the present, because of the things that we were talking about last week, how that impacts our life and causes pain. All right, we got Facebook, we got LinkedIn and YouTube over here, Instagram over here. Everybody is set up and ready to go. So let's go ahead and get started. Once again, you guys know the drill. If you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, I cannot see you. So make sure that you comment and participate so I can see who you are. All right, so as we started last week, we're going to be going over the power of now, and we already learned some phenomenal information about how we are a slave to our mind. And because we allow our mind to run the show, and we allow our mind to be what we identify through the world to the world through, then we end up creating a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. We end up becoming a slave to our mind, and we end up not using it properly. And because we don't use our mind properly, we end up in situations, struggles, and identifying ourselves with things that, while they may not be the most optimal, while they may be painful, we're able to we create this environment where we kind of live in that space and play out this pain over and over again. So, hey, found you through Ruby. Yeah, Ruby's amazing. All right, so as we move into chapter 2, what he's talking about in this book, for those of you that have the same book that I have, you don't need the book, but if you have the book, I'm on page 33, chapter 2. Then we're going to start talking about a way out of pain. And I really like this chapter for those of you that feel like you're stuck. You feel like life has maybe thrown you some situations that have made you sad, or maybe you're in a relationship or have had relationships that have been less than optimal. And no matter how hard you try to climb out of that feeling or those situations, you end up in these negative thought loops, and those negative thought loops stop you from being able to move forward as optimally as you should. So, he starts off saying, the greater part of human pain is unnecessary. It is self-created as long as the unobserved mind runs your life. So we already talked about being a slave to our mind and our thoughts, and we did several exercises last week, how you can start to identify more with who you are as a being and less with your mind. And when you start to observe that mind, remember that you are able to then get in touch with who you really are. Because if you can observe yourself thinking, or if you can observe the thoughts, then you're not the thinker. But because we think that we're the thinker, we think that those thoughts are going around in our head and are a part of us, we start to experience this pain that we have created in our life that is unfounded. The pain that we create is some form of non-acceptance, especially if it's external, right? Because no matter how hard we try to control the people in our lives, or no matter how hard we try to perfectly plan for the best circumstance, because there are other people and factors, and they have their own thoughts and decisions and their own mind that's, keeping them going a mile a minute, and they're a slave to their own mind, then those are things that are very hard to control. But rather than accept what is in the situations or the relationships that we're in, whenever they don't give us what we want, we spend a lot of time, we spend a lot of energy working in a resistant state, trying to force past this energy that we don't like in our life. He calls this some form of unconscious resistance to what is. So from the thought level, this would be the resistance being some form of judgment, because you're judging the situation, right? Because if you were experiencing a relationship that you didn't like, that relationship could be neutral. For you, it may not be what you want to feel, but because you're not feeling what you want, right? The human experience and the labels that we construct to help us understand the life that we live in, we call it good or bad or hurtful or mean, when in your experience it may not be what you want. But if you were able to look at it for it is what it is and not catch the feels that come with the thoughts, then you may be able to more objectively move from that situation, detach from that situation, and even remove yourself from certain situations that are causing you pain and causing you struggle. And so once we have that thoughts about judgment, again, you when he says judgment, to me, I feel like it's judging a situation. Is it good or bad? It depends on who's experiencing it, right? Is it happy? Is it sad? I don't know. Those are different degrees of different feelings, and they're going to be very subjective to each and every one of us. And so then on an emotional level, there's some form of negativity attached to the pain that we're experiencing. And it's not to say that as humans we don't experience these things, but right now we're just being totally objective about what it is that we may be going through when we're experiencing these things. The intensity of the pain depends on the degree of resistance to the present moment. And this in turn depends on how strongly you are identified with your mind. The mind doesn't want to be in the now, it wants to escape it. So, what I take this to mean is kind of how I explain different degrees of happiness or sadness or any of the things that we experience in life. It's going to depend on how strongly we identify with it. And if we are feeling more intense pain, like for instance, if you and I are going through the same situation and you happen to be experiencing it more painfully than I am, then what it means is that you may have a harder time just saying, this is the way it is, accepting that, coming back into that being state, and then seeing how you need to act or how you need to respond to what it is that you're taking in, versus me and the intensity of the pain that I feel in the situation not being as bad. And because I'm not experiencing as much pain, then I'm not identifying with it as strongly as you are. I'm not identifying with the fact that I'm divorced and I lost everything that I had. That's something that happened to me, but that's not my identity. Whereas a woman that has been through the same pain and the same trauma that I've been through could take that pain and relive that pain over and over and make that pain a part of her identity and her bad relationship and how she lost everything she worked hard for, and let that be so intense to her. And the only difference between her and I, if we experience the exact same thing, is the way that we think about it and the way that we judge it. And because of the way that we judge it, then the negativity that we assign to the thoughts that we're feeling about the situation. So let me know if that makes sense. All right. So he says, the more you are identified with your mind, the more that you suffer. The more that you're able to honor and accept the now, the more that you are free of the pain and suffering and free of the egoic mind. This can be fairly hard for you to understand, especially if you are going through something very traumatic and very like gut wrenching. And again, I don't think that he means that the goal is that if we have something painful happen to us, that it's not going to impact us, because we are humans in a human experience. But what I think that he's saying is that when you are experiencing a situation, or if you've experienced a situation in the past and you are understanding that you don't have much control over what happened to you in the past because it's done and over, or you don't have much control over how you want certain people and things to play out, especially if you're meeting some sort of resistance, then the more that you can free yourself from this person that is in a crappy relationship, in a crappy job, in a crappy apartment, living a crappy life, had crappy things handed to them, and start to transcend all of these labels that we put in our human experience and tap back into your being, then that is how you're going to be free of some of the suffering that you continue to perpetually experience, that you have created in your mind. Hey, Ashley. And a lot of the human experience, especially the mind, he says, is built around time constructs. So either we're thinking about the past and how the past is how we identify with that, or we're thinking about the future and how we could prepare or not prepare, or what it's going to look like, or anxiety about the things that are to come. When in all actuality, if humans didn't exist on this world, on this earth, he was using a metaphor of, if a bird asked the plant what time it was, because they don't have the certain constructs that we have with time, they would just say the time is now, right? And so this is going to give you a key as to where you can start to find the happiness in your life. The happiness not being in the past, the happiness not being in your future, because none of those things are real. So if the past is not real and the future is not real, the only moment that is real in your life is the now, and the now, and the now, and the now, and the now. I hope that you get that, because this is going to be very powerful for how you move past some of the pain and past some of the struggles that you continue to allow to hold you back from living the life that it is that you are truly put on this earth to live. He says, yes, we need the mind as well as time to function in this world, but there comes a point where the mind and time take over our lives. And this is where the pain and the dysfunction and the sorrow set in. All individuals are suffering under this burden, but they also keep adding to it every moment whenever they ignore or deny that precious moment, or reduce it to a means of getting to some future moment, which only exists in the mind, never in actuality. Powerful, right? It means that if you now know that whatever happened in the past is now not even real, it's a memory, right? It's a memory. But you keep allowing that memory, that feeling, that pain to be brought into the only moment that is real, the now. Then you taint what is truly real with something that's not even real anymore. And if you can learn to, again, it's more simplistic, right? But we need to understand what we're doing in order to understand how we create some of the pain in our life. But if you can learn to not identify with some of the things that have happened in the past and only focus on the real, I'm not saying it'll totally go away, but you may realize that you don't have to let all of the things in the past make your moment now painful, because it's not real. It's only real in your mind. The same with those of you that like to look ahead in the future. Well, what if this happens? What if this fails? What if I can't do this? I got to plan for this and I don't have this ready. Like, you're not even living in the now. You're so anxious and worrisome about what's going to happen in the future, what could happen, what might happen, that again, the moment that is only real, the one that you're in right now, is being robbed of the joy that you could be creating in whatever is real. Because when you're thinking about what shoulda or what coulda or what might not happen, you're not in the now. You are in a fake figment of your imagination, creating stories that lead you to be in pain, depressed, anxious, stuck, and again, not living your true life in the moment that is truly now. So he says, if you no longer want to create pain for yourself or others, and if you no longer want to add to the residue pain, he's not saying we don't have some stuff that we've experienced, but if you don't want to add to the residue of the past pain that still lives on in you, then don't create any more time, or at least more than is necessary to deal with the practical aspects of your life. So if you want to know, what does he mean when he says to not create any more time? What it means is that if you know the past is not real, right, because it already happened, you know the future is not real because it has not happened, then what about this moment right now could you be doing in order to optimize what it is that you want to experience in this life? What could you be doing? What could you be saying? How could you be feeling? How could you be acting? What could you be experiencing in this moment that is real now. The more that you stay in this moment right now, the less that you suffer. And also, I believe that he means too when he says don't create more time than you need to. For some instances in our life, we may need to look at the past, because in the past we can go over things that have happened, right? And we can learn lessons so we don't repeat them. But we don't need to live there or make that a part of our identity. Or maybe for some of us, we may need to go into the future a little bit, because we may need to say, well, I need to plan for a retirement, or I need to look at what I need to do today in order to get to this point. But once you do that, it's almost like what we talked about in Atomic Habits. Once you do that, you no longer need to worry about that goalpost, as long as what you are doing in the here and the now is moving you toward the life that you want to live. And if what you are doing right now is not moving you toward the life that you want to live, then you have, again, let your mind control the show, and you're not going to get where it is that you want to go, because you are now being controlled by the past and the future, instead of making the now the only moment that counts, the only moment that's real, what you focus on. Hey, Elisa and R. Tuggle and E.C. Robertson. All right, so he says, whereas before you dwelt in time and paid brief visits to the now. So we dwelt in the past, we dwell in the future, and only in little glimpses of our life are we living in the present. Now we have to make our dwelling place the now, and only take brief visits to the past and brief visits to the future for practicality, but we don't live there, right? We just go get information, we plan, and then we come back to the now. Always say yes to the present moment. What could be more futile and more insane than to create inner resistance to something that already is? So then what he's saying, right? So if the past is not real anymore, and the future is not real, and this is the only thing that's now, if you start to think about it, in this moment right now, if you are experiencing something that you don't like, what can you do about it? Aside from, your own personal work, what can you do about something that is already happening in the real moment? And if you start to fight against the people that bring you struggle or strife or pain, or if you try to fight against this situation that is causing you resistance and frustration because you're not able to meet your goal right away, then it only becomes insane, because at the same time you are only in the now. These things already are. They are what they are, right? So then at this moment, he's saying it's about acceptance. They are what they are. It doesn't mean that we can't start to shape the now, right? Through those glimpses into the future, right? Or shape the now by looking at the past for practicality, for information, but coming back to the now. But if you start to just feel that, just understand that for a moment, just listen to that, because I think that if you can really start to implement this into your life, it will start to create this degree of freedom in your life. And you stop fighting so much about some of the things that are causing you pain, instead of just saying, well, this is what it is right now, in this moment now. And in this moment now, it's the only thing that's real. So I'm going to let that sink in. Let's see. He said, what could be more insane than to oppose life itself, which is now and always now? Surrender to what is, say yes to life, and then see how life suddenly starts working for you rather than against you. And so, it's almost like two people speaking. One person's asking questions in this book, and then Eckhart is responding to the questions. So this person is saying the present moment is sometimes unacceptable, unpleasant, or awful. And so a lot of us, we're in that space, right? Where we are currently in the now is not where we want to be. And it's painful, and it's unpleasant, and it's hurtful. And we want to just get out of it as soon as we can, right? So it's hard to sit in it. But he says it is what it is. Observe how the mind labels it, and how the labeling of this present moment as unacceptable, unpleasant, or awful This continuous sitting in judgment actually is creating more pain and more unhappiness for you. Because every time that I mean, it is what it is, right? You're not where you want to be. You're not there. So that part is over, done. You see it, you observe it. It is what it is. But as you continue to say, I don't like where I'm at. I don't feel good. It's unacceptable. It's unpleasant. Guess what that continues to do? It continues to remind you of how much pain and how much unhappiness that you're in. He said, by watching the mechanics of the mind, you step out of its resistance patterns and you can then allow the present moment to be. And it will give you a taste of inner freedom from the external conditions, and it will start to give you peace. Now, this is the key. This is the key, because you're going to take this, and if you don't understand it, if it's going over your head, you're going to think this is crazy. It doesn't make sense. I'm in pain. This is all woo-woo, and it's not. But what he's also trying to say is, so not only are you accepting what is, because in the present moment, that's now, this is what it is, right? Also, combine that to what we talked about last week about how you truly detach from your mind, from being a slave to your mind, and get in that state of being as much as possible. Because once you accept it, then you can start to act. And the acceptance that you are doing is by, number one, so you can observe your thoughts, right? We already know that we can do that. And so if we can observe our thoughts, then we're not our thoughts. We're not that thinking mind. We're something totally different, because we can observe our thoughts. The second thing that you need to know is that you can also observe what's going on around you. So if you can detach from what's going on around you, then truly, really, you may not even be, your identity is not tied into what you are experiencing. That could be a little deep. So if you need to listen to that over, go ahead and listen to it during the replay. So once you're able to accept, then you can act. Whatever the present moment contains, accept it, work with it, not against it, and it will start to transform your life. Because if you are seeing a reflection of something it is that you don't like, and you already know it's painful, so it's no sense in wallowing in the thought of it being painful, which then perpetuates the emotions of it being painful, then in the moment that is now, what can you do about it other than turn inward and turn into your being? And from that being, what would you be being in order for the now and the now and the now to slowly be different than what it is that you experienced that you didn't like, but you had to accept? I hope that makes sense. Y'all let me know if it don't make sense. If I need to explain it a different kind of way, I totally will. Let's see where we are. We have a few moments left. If you have any questions about this topic, let me know. Any comments, any feedback, you want me to explain something over, start leaving comments, because I know the lag time is a little bit slow. So he says, as long as you are unable to access the power of the now, every emotional pain that you experience leaves behind a residue of pain that lives on in you. It merges with the pain from the past that's already there, and it becomes lodged in your mind and your body. And it continues to accumulate into a negative energy that he feels creates an invisible entity in its own right that he calls an emotional pain body. And the emotional pain body lies dormant within some of us. Some of us that are a little bit happier in life, a little laid back disposition, when we get triggered, our pain body may take over maybe 10% of the time in our life, but most of the time we're good, we're copacetic. But for a lot of people, because we talked about this before, you're thinking the same thoughts that you thought last week, last month, last year, and 80 to 90% of those thoughts are in judgments and in pain or in the past and the future, and so they're usually negative. Then for a lot of people, this pain body is active up to 100% of the time. And if it's active 100% of the time, or even more, the more that it's active in your life, the more that you can now understand why you may not be moving where you want to be, no matter how hard you try, or no matter how hard you try to move forward, you keep getting sucked back. It could be things like this that we allow to take over us instead of living in the now. Watch for any signs of unhappiness in ourselves in whatever form. It may be the awakening pain body. So this is important, ladies, in the personal mastery membership. This is why we're going over emotions right now, because we know that thoughts and emotions are the two things that you are going to have to monitor if you want to live the life that you truly want to live. And if you want to manifest and you want to learn how to be powerful in creating the life that you want, you need to start to pay attention to those two things. And so he's kind of mirroring what we're learning in the membership, where we're talking about you need to examine not only what you think, but you have to examine how you feel, because once these little irritations or triggers start to crop up, this irritation, this impatience, maybe starting to feel a little bit down or bored, or you start to escalate into anger and rage and depression, or you start to stir up drama in your relationships because right now you're just not feeling settled if you don't have a little bit of that drama. Then he said you need to catch it the moment that it starts, the moment that it awakens from the dormant state, or as I would say, the moment that you start to get triggered. You need to identify these triggers. You need to start to see if the feelings in your body have changed from the more positive feelings that we talk about on certain emotional scales. And if you are starting to slip into a state that is of a lower energy, you need to catch it as soon as you can. The pain body, this invisible force, it wants to survive. It will do anything that will keep it going. So it will start to, if you let it rise up and take over you and become you and live through you, what did he say? It gets its food through you. It will feed on any experience that resonates with its own kind of energy, anything that creates further pain in whatever form: anger, destructiveness, hatred, grief, fear, doubt, violence, illness. So if it starts to take over, it will create situations in your life that reflect back its own energy. So think of this pain outside of you that wants to continue to grow. So it's trying to feed on pain. So it's going to find it in your past. It's going to find it in your present. It's going to continue to make you be in this state of irritation or anger or boredom or whatever it is until that grows and grows and grows. And it cannot feed on joy. So the way that you kill it is with joy, but the way that you really stop it from becoming a big problem in your life to where you get stuck, or you get in these relationships that you can't get out of, or you're in these circumstances that you aren't brave enough to walk out of, you start to learn how you feel in certain situations and in relationships around people and what you're thinking, and you start to control that, pay attention to that, and start to look at what's triggering you so you don't have to experience it. And when you do, you're able to have more control over it rather than it controlling you. And so that is where we will stop for the day. Again, for those of you that are new to the live stream, remember that if this is probably one of the best lessons or chapters that we can use to start to talk about the class that's coming up on August the 26th, totally free class to learn to protect your energy, because this can help you start to learn not only how to put barriers around your energy and the negative energy that you experience with other people. You know, they're in their fields or they're negative, and then all of a sudden you feeling negative and you don't even know why. Or you go out in public and you're picking up all this negative energy, and it impacts you or it drains you. And we can learn how to work with that energy so we can keep what's ours, so we can stay in high vibe. And then we can also give people and let them have their own energy. Also, because you are going to learn about how to protect your own energy, you will learn about how to be more aware of what it is that you're feeling, which ties into this lesson about not letting the pain body take over to where you're in a perpetual state of suffering that in all actuality you are creating because you've allowed this energy to take over your life rather than you living from your place of being. And then I'll also teach you how to create better boundaries in your life. So if that sounds like something that you want to attend, you can either DM me and I'll send you the link to sign up for the free class, or you can text Mastery to this phone number, 833-231-4407. 833-231-4407. All right, everybody. Thank you for attending live. If you're watching a replay, hashtag me replay. And I will see you tomorrow, same time, same place. All right. Bye, everybody.